Welcome to the Café Culture podcast, a season of discussions on culture, politics, philosophy and science.
At a talk recorded on the 20th of June, 2016, Tom Brooks discussed the UK Citizenship Test.
Well, thank you everyone for coming out on such an important day for football. For some people, not for us. And I take it people can hear me okay? Usually, one of the joys of being a music major when I was younger is I had a roommate who was an opera major. And he had to, for his degree, had to get someone to sing for his degree. Now, I can't sing, but part of singing is hitting the notes. Still can't do that. The other part is being heard. So he taught me how to kind of stand in front of the stage and hit the back of the wall like Pavarotti can. So that's other than his size, that's all I've picked up over the years. So good. So glad you can hear me. And thanks for coming to the show. My name is Tom Brooks, and I'm an immigrant. We exist. It's okay. I'm also a British citizen for those in their chairs getting a little nervous. I'm also a proud British citizen. One of the things that was happening when I used to live in Newcastle was I used to teach at Newcastle University, and I had students come to me for their questions. And I would say, before you ask me your question, let me ask you mine. And my questions would be from the UK Citizenship Test Handbook. And I discovered that these fine young minds, educated by the greatest scholars of British politics in Britain, clearly, had no idea what any of the answers were. And then I found their parents didn't know the answers to these things either. And then I found out the politicians didn't know what was on the test also. And this led me to, in part, be angry that everyone says immigration is so important, everyone says we should do something about it, and then you see what's going on and it's a great big mess. And there's also this thought that something ought to constructively be done about it. So I thought that when it was safe, when I got my citizenship too, when I was British, right? I wasn't waiting before then, because I don't want Theresa May to make my life a little bit more uncomfortable. But when I got through that I was going to do something about it, and what was I going to do? I was going to begin by telling people what is being done in their name on the citizenship test, and begin conversations about what is Britishness. How have we got to where we are? Should this be a part of, does it make sense thinking about what Britishness is and so on, and can you test it, and so on and so forth. So I thought that'd be fun. I've been doing this kind of thing for a while, and I've been asked to write a book. So the book, Becoming British, is about everything you want to know about becoming British, but we're afraid to ask or didn't know where to go. It spells out everything going wrong and how to fix it. You can have a look during the break. So as I say, part of my interest is I did it, in addition to teaching immigration law. And one of the things in this contested area of immigration policy, right? People debate immigration, often disagree. But one thing that all the major parties have in common is they're all committed to the citizenship test. That's not going anywhere. Whether Tory, Labour, Liberal Democrat, somebody else, they're all for it. Now, why? What was the historical background? And why do this in the first place? Other than the fact the Americans did it in the 1980s. Why, other than kind of, America does something and Britain tries to do it worse, why so good? And then Ireland, I used to live in the Republic of Ireland, I can almost get away with this. That the Irish then look to Britain and then try to do it worse than them. That's the joke, it goes all over, that big boomerang. Other than just kind of copying others, why do it? Well, part of the answer is 2001. And before you say 9/11, before 9/11, so when the Oldham riots were happening, particularly Oldham and Bradford, there was a concern with the government that people were beginning to get worried about immigration. That was the beginning of immigration rocketing up to the top 3 or higher of issues of concern. And what was at heart, this concern that folks who were coming here, whether they're from the United States or somewhere else, are coming with different cultures and different backgrounds, and that, if there's lots of folks over time coming to Britain, that Britain might not be British. There might be something British that is affected by all this stuff. Okay, sensible kind of starting point. And so there was this desire to rethink immigration in terms of ensuring that Britishness wasn't damaged by immigration over time, believe it or not. Government did what it always does when it comes up with a big idea. It doesn't act, and it starts with a review. And reviews tend to start in a time-honored way. The then Home Secretary, David Blunkett, got on the phone to someone he knew would know how to sort this out. You know, his old university tutor. Hopefully one day mine will ring me up too. His tutor turned out to be Sir Bernard Crick. And he said, you know, Bernie, whatever the term of affection was, will you lead this review going around the country to find out what Britishness is? We're keen to kind of get a grasp of this and do something about this, to reform our immigration policy in some way. And this is entertaining, but also true. He had a group of folks, about a dozen. They went across the country. If you don't remember, that's fine. It was over 12 years ago. They went to Scotland. And they said to the Scots, right, so what does being British mean to you? And they said things like, they said lots of things, in fairness. Well, I'm being selective, guilty. But one of the things they said was eating haggis. You know, it's a cultural, important thing. Okay, you know, get my pad out and haggis. They then went to Wales, and they went to the Welsh, who didn't all speak with one voice, because they don't, and said, though what they did, they'd sing better than everyone else, and said, right, Welsh people, what do you think being British is? And amongst other things, Welsh cakes were noted to say, the enjoyment of Welsh cakes. That's on the Citizenship Test as a cultural food of Wales. You need to know that. They said the Welsh language, that, you know, we don't all speak it, but it's still there. We're proud of it, and that's good. They went to the Southwest, and they said, right, Southwest English people, what is being British to you? And they said things like, this time of year, Morris dancing, right? Now, Morris dancing, Welsh speakers enjoying a nice plate of haggis to kind of cool down. Well, there's not a lot of folks who do that. And that's in a sense, the heart of the problem. When they asked people what Britishness was, the serious point behind it, people raised points about cultural things specific to the location that they lived in, and didn't say, you know, how they weren't French, or indeed how they weren't from Yorkshire, or how they weren't Geordie, or other things. And instead of thinking about what brought us all together, what made us this unified thing that was British. So the committee got together after this review, interviewing lots of people, and, you know, what is Britishness? We don't know. They said, right, and we're not going to say it's not a specific history as such. They thought it wasn't necessarily these various things that they're hearing across the country. They thought what was unifying people, what made people British, whether in Scotland, Wales, Tyne and Wear, even County Durham, and elsewhere, was their being able to get on in British society, their being able to get on in practical life. And so the original test focused on practicalities of living in Britain. The test is called the Life in the United Kingdom test, not because, in this case, a bureaucrat wrote it, though one did, with several others, but it comes from a statute from I think it's 1918 or so, it's about 100 years old, that says that the Home Secretary must be satisfied any new citizen has, amongst other things, knowledge of life in the United Kingdom. That's where that great name comes from. In the good old days, there wasn't a test. You just had to satisfy the Secretary of State, the Home Secretary. The most famous person, to my knowledge, who did that was Prince Philip. Because Prince Philip is like me. Well, I'm not like him. Well, we're both naturalized citizens. We both got the nod. We went through it different routes. He claimed a different route than me, but he was able to convince the Home Secretary that he had knowledge of life in the United Kingdom, and he had to show he knew English or a language with a quality. I'm happy to be pushed on language later, people want me to. And made it through. Now we've got this test for Britishness, and it started off, as I say, with these practical things. Now, before I get to some of the fun parts, there's fun and seriousness tonight, my friends. I'll say a few bits about what the heck the mechanics are of this thing. So what's the What's a test? If it's in front of you, what does it look like? What are we talking about here? Well, this test, sat by over 2 million people, I'll pause, let that sink in, since 2005. Over 2 million have sat this test. Okay. It's now 50 quid a pop. So those of you in the, think, oh, it's all free, they give them away. No, they don't give them away. 50 quid paid online. Now, when I did it, across the street from Newcastle General Hospital, where I'd have to be admitted, I think, if I had failed it. As an academic, I take seriously my doing well on exams, and I'm very competitive when it comes to that. It was across the street from there. I did my test in Newcastle. When I did it, it was £32 and 24 pence in exact change. And I thought that was kind of like the extra question. How many pennies you got in your pocket, young man? If you don't have enough, well, you're not British. You know what I mean? Wink, wink. So now you pay in advance. Okay. The test has got 24 questions, taken over 45 minutes, not an hour, not half an hour, 45 minutes. So basically you got, not a lot of time to get it through, about 2 minutes, less than 2 minutes to kind of per question. And of the 24 questions you face, the multiple choice, you have to get a first, which means you have to get over 70% of them right. You need 18 or more of them correct. Otherwise, you could be finding yourself on the next boat home. Okay, so that's some of the mechanics. Now, when Sir Bernard Crick wrote the test with his committee, they said that they thought you should write one. This is what it should look like, a multiple choice, following this information, not getting into how to speak Welsh. Maybe ask people, see people know that there's other languages in Britain, but not what those words are. At that time, the Tony Blair government had suspended all applications at the time to become a citizen. There was a real rush to get this thing out. And when it came out, it was known for its errors and its mistakes. It was called by the London Review of Books the funniest book currently available in the English language. There you are. One of the facts that it had wrong is it described Great Britain as England, Wales, and England, Wales, Scotland, and Northern Ireland. It's Great Britain and Northern Ireland. They also got this problem about how many MPs there are. It said there's 645. Well, Sir Bernard was correct. The 645 had contested the previous general election. But that was because the honourable member for Staffordshire South died during the general election. There were 646. And so from the beginning, you have this problem of immigrants who are being required to pass this test they need to pay for, paying more than the full cost. There is profit to the state that comes from taking the citizenship test. That when they were taking this, they had to, the correct answers to pass, many of them were factually untrue. Sir Bernard said in response to, there are errors in it because it was done fairly quickly, quoted from The Guardian, and so on. The most criticized question, and I'll get on to the questions because I know I'm sure I'm going to, Babbling Brooks is beginning to abuse his time. My favorite question was one that was widely ridiculed, and that was a question about what to do if you knock over a pint in the pub in the first test. And the answer, of course, was you apologize and offer to buy another drink. And I thought that was very British, very sensible and good. Americans would probably, perhaps just walk on. That was removed for shame, purposes, I suppose. I don't know. But the first test came out 2005, and a new edition came out 2 years later. And let me give you a taste of what was on that test. So this is very specific to my audience. Which of the following statements is correct? The Geordie dialect is spoken in Tyneside, where the Geordie dialect is spoken in Liverpool. Well, don't know that one, you can swim back, right? So, second, another question coming back on the citizenship test is, a gap year, don't have those in America, a gap year describes, here's one you have choices A through B, the summer school holidays, not quite, a year that students spend working in industry, some of them, perhaps. The year after GCSEs. Unlikely. A year between school and university which students spend traveling or working, or their parents get their way. Good, and they also have a question about where you pay your taxes, and that's, of course, to the HMRC. But you also have other questions that are a bit, those are kind of the good. There's also the bad and some of the ugly. What are the questions asked about the population of the UK? Was it near 56 million, 58 million, 60 million, or 62 million? Well, at the time of the census prior to the citizenship test, the correct answer was 60 million. But when I took it, Britain had 62 million. So you already had the correct answer, well, it was different, was factually untrue. And in the second edition, they have that question again about how many members of parliament there are. You would think the MPs would get this right, my friends. So here, the question from the 2007 test that was valid through 2013, are there 464, 564, 646, or 664? I will spare everyone the indignity of getting this wrong. The correct answer for the test was 646, so Bernard Crick had got that wrong. He said 645, they corrected it, happy days. Yeah, but Parliament changed it to 650, and you've got 650 right now. Oops. There's also a question about the number of members of the European Parliament, so long as Britain is still a member of the European Union. And there, the number of MEPs was also wrong on the thing as well. My favorite question of the earlier test was this. What two places can you go to get your national insurance number? Now, I'm told by people who are born British, you just kind of get one when you're born. You were there probably, you don't remember you were a day old. Well, sample answers, you need to get, there's two of these are correct. You must get both right to pass. Department for Education and Skills, Home Office, Job Centre Plus, or Social Security Office. Show of hands, who thinks Department for Education and Skills? Good. That's one of the two departments on this list that didn't exist when the test was published. Second, who says the Home Office? Well, the Home Office is who I phoned when I actually did get my national insurance number. They set up the interview. The correct answer are the last two, Job Centre Plus and Social Security Office. Social Security Office, part of the Department of Work and Pensions, was also closed while the test was on. And so this correct answer had two choices that were closed. Now, the test has changed since. And let me give you a couple examples of some of the new questions. I'll say some things about why it's a dog's dinner, I think is a phrase we use in this country, and then we can open the floor. So here's some questions from the current test published 2 years ago. Let's have some fun, my friends. We'll start with this is a good one. Is the statement below true or false? Catherine Howard was the sixth wife of Henry VIII. Who says true? Everyone here knows. Who says false? It's false, those who didn't know. So if you get the order wrong of Catherine the Howard and Henry VIII, you've got it wrong. There's only one person in the 180-page, 3,000 pack-filled book, one person alone, who is not a royal, who has his spouse's name mentioned. Can anyone guess who that person is? I'll give you a hint. This man, born in Bengal, set up Britain's first curry house. That was thought important. I'll give you a second hint. You need to know that the curry house is called the Hindustan Coffee House, and that it was located on George Street, London, not Brick Lane. Okay. Sheikh Dean Mohammed is the only non-royal. This is the level we're going to, my friends. I'll give you two more that will make you giggle. When walking your dog in a public place, what must you, that's all of you, ensure? That your dog wears a special dog coat. That your dog never strays more than 3 meters from you. I thought, sensible. Quite sensible. 3 meters is a bit long. that your dog does not come into contact with other dogs. Well, my brother's dog got attacked. I think that's sensible. No, the correct answer is D, that your dog wears a collar showing the name and address of its owner. Another good one. What is a responsibility that you will have as a citizen or permanent resident of the UK? Using your car as much as possible. You might say, welcome to modern Britain. You know, any Top Gear fans, old and new, might say, that sounds fine. Visiting your local pub regularly. That sounds, Camera, that organization, reminds us, not enough are doing that even perhaps tonight. Keeping an allotment. I never knew there were allotments until I came to Britain. No, the correct answer, you're responsibly becoming British. Can anyone guess? Looking after the environment. That is the responsibility they thought they would highlight for all the new migrant people. So, the problems with the test that you, I hope, have a wee flavor of, and you're very, very welcome to ask me about more questions and other stuff, that's fine, is problem one is that the test has become deeply impractical. Where before, in the earlier editions, whatever their other faults, you were asked questions like how to contact emergency services, how to register with a GP, how to contact the police. That's all been removed under the coalition government. You are no longer asked any of these questions. The questions you are now asked are things like, what is the approximate age of Big Ben's clock? Approximately 150 years and growing. Though it might get a total remake if they redo Parliament. Anyway. The height of the London Eye in feet and meters, 443 feet, 135 meters, for those who want to be in the know. So it asks you things like that, largely to trip you up, and also who set up the first curry house and what was his wife's name. Yeah, that's also in the book. There's also a problem of inconsistency. Of course, who set up Britain's first curry house, and what was the name of his dear wife, who we learn he eloped with to Ireland. That was also seemed very important for new immigrants to know. I don't know anyone British who knows anything about that. Second problem is a problem of inconsistency. So this kind of nerdy point is fairly straightforward. That problem about how many MPs there are, in light of the fact the government is planning on making them fewer. So you don't want to give yourself a number, because then you got to write a new test. So they don't ask about the number of MPs anymore. So some of you are thinking, justice is done. Well, before you get too relaxed in your chair, comfortable as they are, you are still required to know the number of the Welsh Assembly, the Scottish Parliament, and in the Stormont in Northern Ireland. That's still required. There's other inconsistencies too that are fascinating. You need to know that there are a High Court and Magistrates Court. There's no mention of the UK Supreme Court. And one of my favorite curiosities, noted in my book, is there are 5 telephone numbers listed in the Citizenship Test Handbook for you to know. Now, the first, George Osborne had a hand in this one, I think. The first one is the self-assessment line for HMRC. So part of me, it's not, politically all right to be against that. So nothing wrong people knowing how to pay their tax, fine. Second, National Domestic Violence Hotline. There's a second phone number. Okay, good. So those, fine. All right, not going to criticize, but let's see if we criticize the other 3. The other 3 are the front desks, serious, 2, the House of Commons, the Scottish Parliament, and the Welsh Assembly. And the reason given in the Life of the UK Citizenship Handbook is so you can see these great houses of democracy. Anyone here from Northern Ireland? They forgot you. Northern Ireland is not mentioned. You can see them too. There's also other problems of gender imbalance that go probably without saying. It only lists male artists, not female artists. There's an historical chapter listing dates and birth of various people. 4 women are noted, about 30 men are. And when the Home Office announced they had a new citizenship test that had, quote, the people that shaped Britain, it noted 9 men, and it noted no women Not even Thatcher. I know. I've noted that there are spurious facts, that there are 3,000 facts over the 180 pages, including about 300 historical dates. I don't know them all off the top of my head before you ask me. And then there's the other little fun thing that I will try to kind of end with, is that there's some curious omissions from the book. So notice, glossaries are the kinds of things that academics look at and no one else reads. Okay, fine, guilty as charged. But I want you to note the things that were removed from the earlier glossary for the Citizenship Test Handbook to help migrants find their way. And then I'll let you know what was added. And you come to your conclusions in your own mind. Removed. Terms that migrants don't need to know anymore. Antenatal care, asylum, disability, discrimination. I'm serious with emergency services, free press. I like that one. There's arguments about what we have in harassment, higher education, immigration, lest they find out they're immigrants. Legal aid, that goes without saying. Maternity and paternity leave, they're not to be told about that. Mortgage, racially motivated crime has been removed. Sick pay, torture, victim, and finally welfare benefits. I found, so there we are. There was over about 300 removed in total. Added, Civil War, okay. House, parentheses, history, for example, House of York. That was added. Protestants, rural, and my favorite, sonnet. Now, my final thought, if I'm being allowed, good, thank you for generosity of time, is this. So it raises a series of questions. The serious point about having this thing in the first place was this concern that if people were coming to Britain, and there was a general concern that the things could change, whatever Britishness was, that it could be affected, it could be changed. In this thought that we want to make sure there are these connections, that the communities that we have that are healthy and strong continue, fine, and that there should be something done about that. And perhaps a knowledge test would be a good way of trying to make that, to kind of make that happen. I've tried to make very clear that this test is often seen as very weird and alien by people who haven't sat it before, in some part because British citizens have not been consulted on what should be on a British citizenship test. It has been designed by Junior Minister and the people working for him in the government, and it's been almost entirely hymns for the last 10 years or more in that department. And I think the citizenship test, amongst a great many other things, has lost its way and lost its purpose. So I end with two last thoughts. The last thought is, what is the purpose of it after all? Is this about a barrier trying to prevent people from coming in? And if it's trying to be a barrier, there's other ways of keeping people out than making up a test that British citizens can't pass themselves. Or is it should it be designed to be like a bridge, like the United States, where the hard graft is, it's hard to kind of, in the United States, it's very difficult to get a visa, hard to kind of fulfill the residency requirements. And if you make it through all that, there's a kind of simple knowledge test at the end. Tell me who the president is, name a Native American tribe, a few other things, and then you're through. And you can fail it, not have to pay anything, and retake it. It's just a kind of a last kind of thing before you're welcomed as an American. So is it about being a barrier or a bridge? And if it's worth having either way, isn't it time we had again that advisor group that Crick had once upon a time that goes out across the country to kind of get right, to speak to people about what they think Britishness means to them across the country, and think more about what this test should be, rather than coming from not so much the top down, but from a room in Whitehall out, have something that involves a lot more of Britain as we try to come up with a British test. Thank you very much for indulging me in this meandering talk. I look forward to your questions. Thank you. Oh, yeah.
Café Culture North East is supported by Newcastle University, Heels and Dance City. We're also supported by DC Cafe, who host the events.